Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I finally present to you my long overdue showcase video of the 8 entries in the Defend the Spot scenario design contest over on Age of Kings Heaven. Where their schedules allowed it, I got some insights and thoughts of the creators of the various maps, how they utilized the new Definitive Edition features, the historical background, etc, etc. In the other cases, I myself summarize the content of the scenario and outline its gameplay elements. But before we get into it, I would like to thank you for your patience in waiting for this video and wish you much fun watching it.
My name is Thanator and this is my entry for the competition. My goal for this map was to experiment with all of the new options brought by the new Definitive Edition editor. The most obvious example of this is the main objective of the map itself. Instead of defending a static point, you are escorting a constantly moving wagon through different locations. I believe all of these experimental features are definitely the highlight of the scenario, from the special abilities of your mercenaries to give them powers like splash damage or a buckshot, to a checkpoint system that means you never have to save or reload. There are also many small additions working in the background, like the barrels, which normally cannot be placed intersecting with any other hitbox. But by using flags and then replacing those with barrels when the map starts, they can be placed anywhere, like on this bridge. If there is one thing I've learned to improve for the next time, it is definitely to get more people to playtest before actually releasing. Especially good balance is very difficult to get right without some outside input. Anyway, it was a lot of fun participating this year, and I hope to see everyone again for the next one.
In Bassi's Battle of Signak, you take up the mantle of Uruz Khan, the charismatic antagonist of the first Tamerlane scenario. As a descendant of Genghis Khan himself, he leads the White Horde but is in conflict with other nomadic tribes and Mongol factions. After a little introductory section, where you need to fend off assassins sent by your enemies, you need to fortify the city of Signak and defend it against bigger and more intense waves of enemies. As you only have a population limit of 75 units, it does have a certain old school flair to it and manages to keep you on edge even after walling off all of the choke points and putting your defenses into place. While at the beginning, the mix of cavalry and cavalry archers pose no real threat to your city and its wonder, an abundance of siege engines and your lack of mango mills forces you to start making daring sallies. The addition of step lances into the Mongol tech tree is more than welcome here, as it turns out to be a veritable tool for the situations like these. With an appropriate pacing at every stage of the scenario and various challenges and surprises up its sleeve, this map is definitely worth checking out. Especially the finale of the scenario makes you wish you did create that save game a few minutes ago.
There's not much of a historical background, as Jensoko is a fantasy land disconnected from reality. It's taken place from the 16th century, as known as the Sengoku period, and the Japanese was expanding their territories and invaded the land of the yokais. Yokais are mystical creatures from Japanese folklore, and they possess strong spiritual power, and heroic humans were sent to exorcise and exterminate them. I'm not much of a designer, as I just recently got back to AoE 2. All of my design views were through trial and error and rediscovering new tricks as I went through AoE 2 new DE editors. I included fantastical elements such as skill and ability systems. There's a lot of interesting things I found about my maps as I designed it. Battling in the city is the core of the gameplay, as well as the scenario having several different stages that challenge you to look out for details and to help your investigation about the origin of the plague. The battle is endless and you have to complete your objective within the shortest time possible. You have random events occurring during the gameplay, such as pirate invasion, bosses, enemy espionage, and supply wagons. Unlike on an usual Defend the Spot map, as you have to spread out your units and counter enemy actions, taking control over strategic points throughout the cities. Enemy waves comes with random army composition and random location, and you must have to have an appropriate army composition ready at all times to counter enemy actions.
The 1453 siege of Constantinople was probably the greatest siege in medieval history. It marked the final end of the Roman Empire and the crossing of a threshold between the medieval and the modern worlds. In The Last Romans, I wanted to do justice to such a major historical event. So my historical research began by reading Roger Crowley's book 1453, a very readable book that presents the story of the siege from all sides of the conflict. What struck me the most from Roger Crowley's account was just how close the Byzantines were in fending off the Ottomans. According to Crowley, the final successful assault on the early morning of May 29th was Mehmed's planned last attempt. By then, the siege was entering its 53rd day, and it was going to be difficult to maintain 50 to 80,000 Ottoman troops with the summer heat approaching and dissension growing among the generals. See, Mehmed is now known as Great Conqueror, but he was only 21 years old at the time, and his position as Sultan was not fully secure. So while I think there's a tendency to look at the siege as a foregone conclusion with Ottoman cannons and guns against the Byzantines' ancient walls, Crowley's book really drives the point that this was still a battle of men against men, with swords and spears and arrows, and no matter the effect of cannons, it still took Ottoman troops to fight hand to hand against the defenders to take the city. And even then, despite all their numerical advantages, the Ottomans still almost lost. And that was really what I wanted to capture in this scenario, by having you play as the Byzantines and attempt to rewrite that history that very well could have gone differently.
Well, Macedon's always fascinated me, especially the wars of successors after Alexander's death. I picked this story because General Perdiccas' killing location is unknown, so I imagined an ambush in a cave high up in Zagros Mountains will be enough for a single tiny map story. I came up with this idea while cycling my usual everyday exercise among the ancient ruins of Philippi, where I also live from my birth. Its original name was Crinides, meaning fountains, and Crinides founded by Thesian colonists in 360 BC. The city was conquered and renamed by Philip II of Macedon in 356 BC. I had a hard time mostly in the use of triggers. I'm new to triggers, so I had very limited time. About 2 weeks to YouTube search and forum search, mostly from AoKH, trying to learn the basics while redesigning the map for the purpose of the contest. So yes, my biggest issue was triggers. Alkhalim, you was one of the guys helped with your YouTube channel, so thanks a lot, mate. Now about balancing, I set some spawn loop points with fixed timers, and the only thing I did is increase the number of units during testing. I left it somewhere I felt it right, so basically that's it. I haven't created a scenario with triggers before, so I used the original editor back in 2000 where I made some maps for my friends to play locally. Internet was too slow back then here in Greece, and it kind of felt the same. Of course, there were more features in the new editor. I love the waterfalls and the new graphics. Well, the right cave entrance. I was trying to optical simulate a cave entrance to something that I don't think many have seen in Age of Empires. I've had enough with the cute tiny cave entrances, so I wanted something else, more noticeable. I also tried to make holes in the ceiling of the cave that let some light inside and illuminate the northern part of the cave where the armies colliding. And many more smaller elements, like the illusion of lighting at the terrain around fixed torches inside the cave, and smoke effects coming out from the right cave entrance due to the activity of people inside. Yes, I think that's all.
Defense of the fortress made by Bloom is a whole different beast to tackle. While at first more or less looks like a standard random map game, there are a few factors which give you a widely different experience. The map is filled to the brim with smaller side quests to keep you busy in the earlier stages of the game, while you build up your economy and your opponents, which there are 4 of, amassed up forces. You start off with some defenses, but because the map is ludicrously large, you really need to establish a base at each of the entrances. Simply sending your troops back and forth would not work there. If you got that to work, you only have to traverse to the heart of each enemy's base and dismantle the monument you find there. While this map does not have any historical background, or apart from the post-turns any intricate trigger systems, the sheer otherness of defending such a large area against multiple opponents diverts enough from normal games to make this worth giving it a shot.
Hi, I'm Mr. Mew, and I'm the author of The Fountain of Youth entry. I first came up with the idea of statues that came to life at some point during the game, which the player would have to fight. From there I decided a temple would be an appropriate location that lent well into the spirits attacking you, the invaders. Unfortunately, once the statues were invincible, I wasn't sure how to make them mortal again, so now they're just eye candy. I wouldn't say I have the most interesting feature. Perhaps, maybe the boss battles. I was toying with an idea to add an on-screen health bar. Originally killing one would debuff enemies, but I had issues applying it to newly spawned enemies without affecting current ones. Balancing for me in general is challenging. I'm not exactly a high-level skill player, and do strange things with my microing. I was also short on time once it came to balancing. However, I did attempt to implement a system where each wave would be more difficult than the last. Definitive Edition didn't affect my approach very much. Mainly, it gave me some more options with triggers, but also meant I had to find new tricks to replace old ones that no longer worked, such as still statues. Audio was another thing. The new .wav format proved to be too much of a hassle to implement.
My scenario, Doorstep to Valhalla, features the admittedly a bit speculative adventures and exploits of Leif Erikson, the son of Eric the Red from the Finland saga, in America. While only relatively few relevant information are known about this, mostly the names and their setting itself, it is really a quite interesting and inspiring story, maybe especially because of those restrictions. I had a lot of fun incorporating some mythical elements as well, like Valkyries and Anharias stalking the Americas, despite the fact that Leif Erikson was actually of Christian belief. But a bit of embellishment never has harmed the telling of an epic story now, has it? Balancing has been especially tricky in this one, as your opponents attack in waves that change size dynamically with the actions that the player takes. There is a day and night rhythm, a custom resource system, and each of the 3 Norse gods that a player might pledge their allegiance to basically offers its own little tech tree. Thus I'm quite grateful that I got some other people for once to try out my map, because it makes a great difference when you, who created the map, plays it versus when somebody fresh tries it out instead. Did you make clear what the objectives are? Do they understand the mechanics of the map? Are they even fun or interesting on a gameplay side of things? Also, they find bugs on the first playthrough that you did not run into 20 testing runs by yourself. I don't know why or how, but that usually happens. And then it is great to be able to address those issues directly and in coordination with your testers, which is especially important with the current suboptimal custom map implementation system in Age of Empires 2D, where there is sadly no way to leave such comments or questions directly under the map. For me personally, this contest offered a good opportunity to really dig in deep into the new features of the Definitive Edition editor, as well as Norse mythology, and experiment with all the new tricks I learned. Maybe I went a bit too far on the technical side and left narration of this story a little bit out of the picture, but at least in terms of triggers, this is my most intricate work yet. Before I upload it to the Age of Empires 2 DE mod section though, I do need to finish smoothing out some of the rough edges of this scenario. So I just thought I finished editing this video, then I noticed, hey, wait a second, there is no closing for the whole thing. So I would like to give a warm thanks to everybody who participated in this video, to all the ideas and insights I got from the other scenario creators. It was great to finally have like a sort of collaboration here. I hope that you as a viewer could find some interesting new scenarios you would like to try out. I will include links to the ones I can find in the description below, and yeah, maybe you also go and check out Age of Kings Heaven. Not only the scenario design contests are there, but there's a lot of scenarios and guides and all that jazz over there as well, so definitely a good place to look at if you enjoy custom scenarios for Age of Empires 2. That's that. Yeah, not much left to say. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Have a good one. Goodbye. This has been Alkhalim.